Yes, not every action is based on emotional damage, though.
No, many actions inside of you are based on purity. Pure emotions of desire, passions, longings.
So I was just thinking of an example where you gave the road as an example of a 6-lane highway coming into here.
Yep.
So a person's want to protect the environment because they see it as a manifestation of God's love.
Yeah.
And so to stop that 6-lane highway coming in, how would you see that? Or is it just the fact that everything...
Can you see that there was just, right there was different things happening. Right at the first part of your question, you were in this state, your own feelings were in this state of, loving the environment and so forth. Yeah. As soon as you went to the emotion of stop, as soon as I want to oppose something, what am I now doing? I'm now setting up a different emotion within me. What's the emotion within me?
Fear.
Fear. It's a fear-based emotion.
Well, only in the sense that one would see the impact that the road would have on the environment that's being affected.
But I'm saying if all of your emotions were pristine about this issue, no one's going to build a 6-lane highway.
Well, of course,
because you won't attract it.
Well, it's not just me singularly, that you're asking everybody to be in that place in order for nobody to think about creating a 6-lane road. So there are people thinking that. So what do the people who don't have that thought mean to do? Just say, oh well, that's okay, let the 6-lane road come in.
See what? Yeah, I feel that totally. I'm not. What I'm saying is, every time you put energy into fighting something, you are actually creating more fear. And we'll talk about emotions and what they create in a minute. But this came up last night actually when we were in Burnie too. For those of us that were there, there's a few here that were there. Let's look at what happens. We often have right at the top level some anger, right, about an issue. Right? So if many of you thought about a 6-lane highway coming into here and really let yourself think about and feel about it, you'd feel quite angry. I'm angry that my environment's getting damaged. I came here to stop environments getting damaged. I want, this, and so straight away there's some anger. Anger covers some fear within you. So understand that every time you're angry, there's something going on inside of yourself. It's got nothing, like, in the first century it said someone can come up and punch you in the face and you can not be angry about it. And in fact,
that's what you said.
I said to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
Right? Now, how could you do that? Because you'd have to be in a pretty good state of love for that, don't you think? Yeah. You'd have to be in a state where someone can hit you and there is no emotional feeling inside of you except the feeling of love for that person in that act.
But why did they hit you in the first place if you didn't have fear within you?
Well, it might be because of their condition.
Their fear.
Their fear. See, often a person in a truth attracts people in fear. So you may be in truth and you'll attract people in fear in your life as a result of that. Because what do they need to get rid of their fear? Truth. That's why you attract them, right? So this is where you would encourage. Because...
So the better you get, the more problems you attract.
No, it's not that way. It's not that way.
That was just a bit of a remark.
Yeah, the truth is the law of attraction works really well in the sense the more you clear out of your soul, the less you attract. But that doesn't mean in the end you're not going to attract nobody coming up to hit you, because a lot is dependent upon their condition too. Right?
But we shouldn't react.
It's not about not shouldn't react. I'm not saying it's not about shouldn't react.
Or it is better not to react.
I'm not saying that either.
No.
What I'm saying is you won't even have a feeling to react. There's a big difference between those three statements, isn't there? The first two require an effort. The third one requires no effort on your behalf.
You just love and brave.
You just love, right? Yeah. Now, to get to that stage, all of the emotion that's underneath needs to be released. So that under our anger is some fear. Under the fear is some... What might be under the fear? Might be some grief maybe, right? So let's say they did put in a big highway into here. How would you feel about the disruption of the environment, really? After you deal with your anger, I'm going to let yourself get rid of the anger. In other words, imagine you could do nothing at all about it for a moment. what would you feel?
Grief. Sorrow, grief.
Just sorrow, grief, wouldn't you? There'd be a deep sorrow and grief. What's that? That's in you already, from emotional damage from childhood and everything. So it's got to be related to something going on when you were little, right, for that to be in you. Because the truth is, if they built a 6-lane highway into my property, right, I would not feel that sorrow and grief, because I know that I can create anything I want somewhere else. So I wouldn't feel that myself. So there has to be some grief that I've let go of to get to that point. Because in the past I certainly would have felt that, right? And now I don't. Let's go deeper than the grief. What might be under the grief? Why might I feel so much sorrow about my particular space being destroyed in that way? And even I might view it as my particular space is the earth. Why do I feel that about the earth?
Self-protection.
Okay, some more basic things, right?
Some security.
Yeah, so safety, security, and all those kind of things might be deep childhood emotions that I never experienced. Right? I felt unsafe, insecure, controlled all the time. Powerless all the time when I was a child. And because of that, I have this grief in me already. Does that make sense? And then, because of the grief, and I don't want to feel the grief, because who cries about a road? Well, some do, but not many people are allowed to, are they? So I get into my anger then. And then we want to take action. The actual desire to take action comes from our desire to suppress our fear, which comes from our desire to suppress our grief, which comes from our desire to actually suppress the core emotion that was created when I was little. And if I release that, not only will all of those other emotions disappear, but also I will no longer attract that event. Makes sense? Yeah. Now, if I can give you some really simple examples of that. Last night I gave an example where myself and Mary were flying from England back to Australia. I'm a vegan, so I don't eat meat or anything like that. And I always tell the airline what I want to order as a meal. So the meals get served. It's a 747. We're coming back on. The meals get served, and I don't get a meal. Now, what would be a normal reaction? A bit of upset. What's going on here? Well, I didn't get my meal. But what's under that? What would be my next action? Generally. Oh, yeah. So come over here. You see this happening, don't you, on the airlines? Every time you want. Come over here. Why haven't I got my meal? What's going on? I ordered it. What's happening? I'm not happy with this. So I could have done all that, right? But my law of attraction attracted me not getting fed. So there was an emotion in me that attracted me not getting fed. So what do I need to do instead? I need to find my emotion. So what I did was I didn't connect to that because I didn't feel it, all that. I started feeling that. And what I started connecting to was some emotions underneath that. And I actually cried on the plane for about 15 or 20 minutes about these emotions. I'm not cared for. Nobody cares. It was one of the emotions. Right? In other words,
So
there
why
were...
didn't you get it?
Sorry?
Why didn't you get it?
Because I attracted it. No, and I attracted it because...
Somebody just forgot.
No. No, the universe doesn't work that way.
And if someone had just forgot, you'd make a whole lot of people feel really bad. Unnecessarily.
No.
You could have just reminded them.
No. What attracted it is my emotion. This is something because you haven't heard the rest of the story yet. And I'll prove to you it was my emotion. I own the causal emotion for that event. Everything that happens to you, you create. Right? And I own that. You create it not by your thoughts, you create it by your emotions, your feelings. Right? Alright, so I cried for 15 minutes. After I finished, and by the way, while I was crying, Mary was upset with me because she was saying to me, "You're just being a martyr." Yeah? I'm dealing with some causal emotion. She said, "Oh, do you want some of mine?" I said, no, because I created this event. And I want to take full responsibility for this event that I created that's happened to me. It didn't happen to you. You were fine. You got fed. I didn't get fed. So it must be something to do with me. Right?
And then the meal turned up.
No, what happened is these two attendants come up and said, "Oh, we just realised that you didn't get fed."
Did they know you were crying?
No, they didn't know I was crying. If they did, they would have wondered why I was crying about not getting fed. No, they didn't notice me crying. And what I actually did when I was crying was I actually put on the, and dimmed the lights, put on the thing, and just let myself go for it.
They saw them dripping.
So just a little trickles down there. And what happened was that, they come along and they said, "Oh, you didn't get fed, did you?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Oh, what would you like?" And I said, "Oh, what I really like is a big bowl of pumpkin soup or something like that." I'm vegan, I said, explain. So I'd like a big bowl of pumpkin soup and a really big salad, like, not a normal airline salad. I was saying a really big salad is what I really want. And I thought I was sort of joking with them, really. But they said, "Oh, we'll see what we can do." And they went off and they brought back from first class exactly what I wanted. And then they just put it there and I was quite happy after that, right? Now...
And Mary was crying.
She was upset that I got a good meal. Better.
Was somebody in first class crying?
I got no idea. But what happened was that it only took me feeling the emotion to create the new situation. Now, I have had this happen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times in my life now, right? Particularly in the last few years, putting all of these things into practice, where all I need to do is have a feeling, and what I felt is automatically created, and I didn't have to call anybody or anything. Now I can actually feel, I would like to talk to such and such, and usually within a half an hour they call me. Like, I don't call them, they normally call me as soon as I have that feeling. Right?
Have you got my phone number?
So, can you see what's going on? What's going on is when you deal with the causal emotion inside of you, you do not need to do all these intellectual things.
But you're sort of talking about a very basic, like nobody cares, a very basic thing. So is that actually a formula for, like a basic formula for everybody? Or does it have to be...
I had to connect with the emotion inside of me that created the event, not the one inside of you that might create your event. Like, we have different emotions that are based on what happened to us in our childhood. But there are obviously very common things occurring to the whole human race with many of these emotions, because many of us have been treated in similar ways.
Is that ultimately just a lack of love?
It is all ultimately a lack of love, but we can intellectualise that and skip over the actual feeling of the emotion. See, what you want to avoid doing is this, and many of us do this. Here's where we are right now, emotionally. Here's you could call it our emotional condition right now. I call it our soul condition. Right? Here is where we are right now. Here is where we think we want to be. Right? Some place up here. And you know what we do most of the time? We just imagine ourselves to be there. In our mind. And you know what? It's not real. The real law of attraction is operating on this, not on this. You can imagine this all you want. You're not going to create anything different until you're actually there. And the only way to actually get there is to feel all of this emotion in between.
Well, it's like an emotional body, isn't it? It's like a body of its own, and until you feel that in that body, that physical...
Yep. It's a physical and emotional expression, and feel all of that and experience it. You need to actually, and this is a word that I constantly use, is you need to experience it fully, it completely. The reason why we have these locked up emotions is because when we were a child, we were shut down from experiencing each emotion completely. So you think about it now, how many times do you now experience an emotion completely, good or bad? Most of us don't, because we're so shut down in all different ways that we tell ourselves we can't, even if it's a good emotion. You know, how many of us, when we have a good emotion, you feel like singing and dancing and yelling and screaming, and you know, but we feel we can't do it because they think I'm nuts. Or, you know what I mean? We have all these judgments automatically, right? And then the negative emotions. How many of you right now would feel very comfortable if I said something to you and all of a sudden you just burst out crying and fell on the floor in a fetal position and just cried for an hour? How many of you would be comfortable doing that? Well, in the end, you will be. You will be comfortable doing that. And you know what? In the end, in a very short period of time in these earth change events that are going to happen in the future, every single person on earth is going to be comfortable doing that.
What do you call a short time?
5 years. Yeah. How, you know, we've all heard about 2012, world changes, all of these things, right? How are they all going to happen? They're all going to happen by you doing this. That's how they're all going to happen.